Right.
Okay, kia ora koutou. Welcome committee members and our presenters, Morena, and apologies for a little bit of start this morning. I think it's been a bit over boards and some of our members needed to get a coffee, so kia ora.
It is for,
Oh, just to before we sort of open up, it's just that we've got a bit of a change here on our agenda this morning due to presenting from our staff. So 8.3 is now at 11:10, and then 8.4, 10:35, 8.5 at 10:55. Apologies for that.
oh, thanks. It's all right.
I don't think changing here. The meeting has been ordered, and our health and safety, just our exercise here, if we need to evacuate. We'll open up with our opening karakia, and as a group, we'll all sort of say it together. Kia ora. Kia ora, te mariho, kia whakapapa namu te moana, hei urahi o tātou I te rangi hei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou I a tātou katoa. Kia ora. So apologies, do we have any apologies for this meeting this morning? Any conflicts of interest? Acknowledgements and tributes. Any public participation, any restrictions? Actions from public participation. Gee, this is going to be a quick meeting.
Oh, you've just done the easy part.
Urgent business. Okay. So item 8, information reports from the Chief Executive and Council officers. 8.1, March update from the Ministry of Social Development. Oh, Darlene, kia ora, welcome. I have a mover to receive the March update from Ministry of Social Development. Kia ora, Chris. And do I have a seconder? Thank you. Kia ora, Darlene. Is there anything you'd like to highlight in there, in the report? Yep. Oh, I'm going to use this. Yeah, I'm just saying it.
Tēnā koutou, ko Darlene Restrick tōku ingoa, he uri ahau no Tainui a Pāparangi, me ngā te tāne, ngā te baru, me ngā te manuoni, ai kuki airani ngā iwi, no reira tēnā tātou, ko au te komihana aruhi mo te manatū whakahia tō ora. Tēnā tātou, Darlene Restrick, Regional Commissioner for the Central Region. Great to be here today, and I think it's a real opportunity just to be able to talk about some of the kind of social and economic pressures that we're seeing across the country, but particularly just to provide you a bit of a snapshot of in terms of what that looks like for the South Wairarapa. My MSD region goes from Fielding over to Dannevirke, all the way down east. Southern Wairarapa and over to Ōtahi. So that just gives you a snapshot of the central region that I'm responsible for. So I've put together a bit of a presentation just to give you some information. I know you received the quarterly updates from MSD, and we're always really keen to know if there's any other feedback about other things that you would like to know more about that we can include in these updates. So obviously the June quarter is just finished, so we usually allow for about two and a half weeks for our official data to become available. So there will be a new update that will be out kind of mid-ish July. So I guess just and what's quite interesting as I go around is I often talk to a lot of people that still are quite unaware of the work that MSD does across the community, but also I think nearly everybody in their lifetime will have some connection with MSD, whether when you're younger, through middle age, or even when you get to your super. So our client base that we work with is quite substantial. So we do support a lot of our clients with employment services. We provide and we contract out a lot of training courses. We support seniors in our community. We support working parents with childcare subsidies, and also some of our clients that are working with childcare subsidies. So, and emergency housing and social housing are two areas that we play in. So the MSD operates in that employment, income and housing space. Thank you. Just some of the information that you're already aware of, just through what the update is that we send out every quarter. So job seeker numbers are continuing to rise, but it has kind of leveled out a bit more compared to what it has been in the last kind of 12 to 2 years, 12 months, 18 months. So we're doing, all we can through the work that we do in the service centre to be able to support and work with employers to take on, particularly those people that have been displaced through employment. But one of the key things we're seeing locally and nationally is that people are remaining on benefit for longer periods, which is not ideal. And sometimes people might come on a job seeker type benefit to look for work, but over time, what we start to see is some of the some health conditions may start to develop over there. So health condition and disability numbers across the country are continuing to grow. I can tell across the region that we're certainly seeing that increase of a shift of more than 50% of the people that we work with are on health-related benefits, and work may not be an option for them kind of in the near future. Amy. Just some of the trends that have been highlighted on there. So obviously, like I said, unemployment's been rising. We've had people at the March quarter, then at the same quarter last year. Numbers are quite low, so even though the 82% figure looks really good, we are still getting people into work. It's just at this time there aren't enough jobs to go around for everybody that we are servicing that's coming through the door. So it's still having an impact, but like I said, we are seeing people staying on for longer periods, particularly in that 1 year plus. Thanks, Amy. Just with the employment, as you would have seen, clients cancelling their benefits going into employment, which is fantastic. That 102 figure is across all of Wairarapa as well. So South Wairarapa had a big chunk of that 102 clients exiting. The flexi wage there and the mana and mahi. So those are the employment products and supports that we have to be able to help people get into the workplace.
A quick question with that 102, does that include seasonal work? Like, because it's sort of March, that's like the summer, spring, sort of like the end of summer where lots of fruits and things are being picked. Are we likely to see this plummet again now that we're into the colder?
Yes, potentially. Yep. So those numbers for the quarter will look quite differently. So that's anybody that exits into work, whether that might be temporary or full time. It's classed as when they cancel their benefits, so they're no longer in receipt of support from us. Thanks, Amy. So just a bit about how we support people to prepare for work. So we invest quite heavily in terms of training programs. So particularly across the region that I'm responsible for, we have just under $10 million that we have available to be able to contract and work with employers and contract training providers to provide work preparation type programs. I'll just get you to go to the next slide, thanks, Amy. So this is quite a large snapshot that shows all of the mahi and the funding that is MSD support in the Wairarapa region. So I know we've got Mayor's Task Force for Jobs colleagues here that are going to talk about that soon. But it's not just about work preparation programs. We are doing more working directly with employers who are, we've got an initiative called Training in the Workplace where we're doing more hands-on experience with an employer. We might pay someone's wages for 4 weeks in the hope that after they've had 4 weeks in their real life work environment that the employer might take them on. And we know businesses are struggling, particularly at this time. And so we've got to make sure that the programs that we're funding and future kind of workforce growth and industries that are growing, that we can provide the right support and training to be able to support them as well. We've got a whole lot of supports that we offer to clients going into work as well. So it's not just about they get a job and we cut them off. There's actually a whole lot of stuff that we can do to kind of recommend that support. In terms of the on the right hand side there around the community stuff, so under budget 26, there was an announcement made around the food provision. So we'll be continuing to provide support and food to the existing providers that we fund within the region. We do a large investment in terms of family violence and sexual violence programs right across the country. So we provide budgeting services. We have Heartland services down in the Wairarapa, which is fantastic, and other types of programs, particularly in that housing space where we want to be able to support people kind of back into housing. So this is just a good snapshot of all the different things that we fund and provide and support within the community. So there's actually a large investment that comes into.
Yeah, what's been the ready to rent program?
Yeah, so that's we run programs just to make sure that people are have got the right information. They're ready and prepped. They know what it means to go into a rental property, how to work with landlords, how to just engage in that process of what it means to be a good tenant. So we contract providers to be able to run those programs that clients that are looking for housing opportunities and potentially what are some of those barriers. And so doing a ready to rent program is just about making sure that they're in the right space, they've got the right tools to be a good tenant and understand what a good tenant looks like particularly in the private rental market.
And just following up on that, what's the emergency housing? What does that actually look like in Wairarapa? It's a big issue nationally at the moment, and
yes,
there's a bit of controversy around it. How does that sort of look?
Yeah, so across the Wairarapa at the moment, we have 5 families that are in emergency housing. So that is actually living in a motel. And so it's not just about emergency housing as well. If someone comes to see us, emergency housing is kind of a last resort. So we fund transitional housing, which might be shared living arrangements. If people are at risk of losing their tenancy, we do everything that we can in order to be able to keep somebody in their rental property. So we might pay some of their arrears, help them out with a bond to get into a new place. So about 70% of people who exit from emergency housing go into either transitional into private. But for the other 30%, they're not obligated to tell us where they go once they exit emergency housing. There have been some changes to the emergency housing gateway that came into force from the August of last year. But our role isn't to stop people going into emergency housing. It's how can we find a better solution for the individuals as opposed to stopping them. And the staff turn up every day. They're there to do a good job and they want to help people. Our role isn't about putting people on the street. We work with a number of community providers, a number of our iwi services across the country and the region in order to be able to facilitate a good outcome. Sometimes that's not always possible, particularly if somebody has contributed to their housing need themselves, but we do work across and we have good relationships across the board where we try and navigate the best outcome for our client.
I think from a regional point of view, what would be great is what businesses you're actually working with, like across the Wairarapa, so that one, we can inspire other businesses to get involved. I just heard the other day in Masterton that the company Kiwi Lumber is pretty much responsible for all the South Africans moving to Masterton because they've actually created an import business of skills from South Africa and have actually changed the scope of Masterton. And I think that's sort of like, that could be, what they're doing there could be rolled out more nationally.
I guess it's really important that it's about business, it's about community, it's about local government, and it's about central government agencies like MSD working together, because how can we support and educate and upskill our businesses on what supports MSD can provide. But my big thing is that actually if we've got more locals in our jobs, that's less people on benefit, that's more people contributing to the economy, but there is a stigma around taking on some of our clients. And so we've done things like had Business After 5 events. We had Minister Upston attend the business chamber event we held in the Wairarapa Service Centre. So our role is to continue to educate businesses. We have a database of who we engage with and who we work with. I've got a team of 3 employer-facing staff who work directly with employers. So they're out and about across the region. So if that's something you're interested, happy to tell you who we engage with. And particularly, it doesn't mean they necessarily employ from us, but we have an ongoing relationship with them, and we try and encourage them and entice them to work with our clients, because we don't want them sitting with us long term. We actually want them thriving out in the community. So anything that MSD, local council can do to be able to promote, you know, more people and work in the Wairarapa is a good thing, and more work from our locals is an even better message. So yeah, ask certainly for your support in that space. And just probably to the next slide, actually, just around kind of the regional workforce trends. So we're seeing, like I've mentioned, around a few, or continue to see some kind of mixed conditions across the region, but we know that particularly some sectors remain under pressure. So some of the strongest areas of growth include, or that are mentioned there, around particularly in the agriculture, forestry, farming, construction, accommodation and food services, healthcare, social assistance, and admin and kind of support service types roles. So while growth isn't kind of consistent across all industries, they continue to create opportunities for local workers. So that means we've got to make sure that we focus our partnerships, particularly when we're working at that regional area. And what are those kind of growth areas? What are the things that we need to contract and look at in terms of providing extra training to upskill people? Amy? One of the things, we've done quite a few business events. We've invited a lot of employers and different individuals to these events. And what I continue to hear when I'm out and about is what are the most in-demand skills that employers want. So they do talk a bit about what they need most. So things around, there are some skills gaps that we've certainly seen, but I think one of the things that I consistently hear from employers is that, you know, technical skills or those skills alone aren't enough. So it's things like reliability, that work readiness, communication and adaptability. And it's not just about maybe perhaps an MSD client that they may have employed in the past. It could be anybody, because I think what I'm certainly hearing is, you know, mental health in the workplace is becoming a thing. So we've launched Chamberworks, which is a national website in partnership with the Auckland Chamber of Commerce, but a number of chambers have signed up across the country, including the Wairarapa. So it's an online website that's actually got some tools on there and designed to help not just for when an employer is recruiting, but also for when they've got current employees in the workplace and how they kind of can support them through some of the learning and tools that they have on that website. So we're trying to not make it just about MSD, it's about how do we support current businesses and current employers who are potentially facing some of those issues around, you know, reliability or communication in the workplace. So these are really key things and can sometimes be that determining factor of whether or not somebody stays in the workplace or not. So that's just a bit of a snapshot of the work that we're doing, particularly across a lot of, you know, not just with through Years Task Force for Jobs, but we work closely with both iwi across the Rohe as well, and in terms of some of the, you know, programs and things that we want to be able to support to get people into work as much as possible. But it's all about working together to achieve the shared goals. So I'm responsible, we're all responsible for the people that live in the Wairarapa community. And I think fair to say, I'm sure we all want, better outcomes and people thriving in the communities. Nō reira, tēnā tātou.
So one quick. I'm just looking at the report on the reasons for hardship assistance or the special needs grants. I mean, that I can see that you're at 98 billion at the height of COVID, and you've pulled that down. And it's now at 10. That's a huge amount. At that 10 million, what was it prior to COVID? Like, have we reached below what the budget was prior to COVID of this area, or have we gone below that? Because we're starting to see emergency costs starting to rise. So it feels like it's gone a bit too far in that respect.
Yeah, I think what we've seen over the last wee while is the cost of living pressures. So, most recently we've seen the impact of fuel that's had on families. So there's been I guess during that COVID time, there was, a large increase for support over that time. But
These numbers are prior to the fuel crisis though.
yes, yeah. Yeah, but cost of living, like high rents and things like that are still.
The question I'm saying is why haven't you gone too far like on that emergency housing?
What, sorry?
So the money, it's gone from 100 billion to 10.
It's talking about emergency housing.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, but we're talking about emergency assistance.
Yeah.
Not emergency housing.
Yeah, so it's now down to 10. Is that below what it used to be prior to COVID? And is there a change in that direction, or it seems the government's pulling out of emergency housing?
Okay, so I don't have the numbers prior to COVID, but it would have been probably post-COVID. I think it was around 2022, 2023, when emergency housing kind of peaked at its highest. And so from a government perspective, like a motel was no place for families or whānau or tamariki to be growing up. So the government, when they came into power, introduced or talked about that is not a place for families to be. So what are some alternative options or other things that we can support whānau with prior to going into emergency housing? And so there has been a reduction in emergency housing, and that has been something that the government has been very clear on in terms of reducing the number of whānau, particularly tamariki emergency housing. So that number has reduced significantly. And as I mentioned earlier, the housing gateway or the gateway to be able to access emergency housing was tightened from August last year. So that's why we would have seen a dramatic decrease. But prior to the year 2000, we very rarely had people living in motels prior to COVID, but it was more the later end of COVID when emergency housing kind of came at its peak. I think across my region, we had about 280 families at its peak living in emergency housing motels. So at the moment, across the region, we're sitting on about 11 families across my whole region living in motels. If they're not in a motel, they may potentially be in a transitional housing, which are contracted providers through the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. And so we have properties that whānau can go to first before we look at emergency housing, and that's kind of the last resort. Or we help them stay in their current dwelling, or we find potentially other options for them.
Thank you.
Thanks, darling.
Chair, just through to you. Thanks for the report. I always find that sort of information extremely helpful to give you that snapshot of what's going on in Wairarapa. But there's some other things which isn't there in the context of what we're seeing currently every day. So I suppose I've got three questions for you. The government has announced a raft of changes to benefits. So I suppose my first question is, where's that likely to impact on people in the Wairarapa? What are going to be the changes, and what will be the impact of those changes? That's the first question. Secondly, you spoke about your clients. We've got people from the jobs here that are going to receive. Can you just actually expand a little bit? You've noted the relationship here, but you work quite differently in some ways, and I'd like to know how you tie that together. you know, in terms of avoiding affirmative action and looking at the broader sort of needs as well. And the third one is, on average, something like, could be higher in the Wairarapa, but nationally 15 to 17% of young people when they leave school have got no jobs for the next 12 months. Amongst Murray, it's much higher, it's up to 45% of no jobs. So I'd just like to know a little bit more about how you're focusing on that particular group.
I'll talk to the first question there around government changes. And I don't know if there's anything in particular you are thinking about with the changes. So,
Coming off the being taken off job seeker if they've not a job in a certain time, or having to be reliant on their parents for income.
okay. Yep. So that change is coming into effect around November. So for 18, 19-year-olds, the government has put a number of policies in place. One of the things that they are focused on, which will be happening in the next wee while, is around work for sole parents, and so being able to support sole parents and get them ready for the workforce. So the stuff that you're talking about, particularly from a policy setting around the 18, 19-year-olds, that may potentially have an impact, particularly for young people and their families over that time. Every client that is on any type of benefit has to reapply every 12 months. And it's very rare that we would cut their benefit. They have to come in and meet with us, and we do an assessment with them to talk about what has anything changed in their situation. They may be a job seeker, they may not be, but that is a check-in that is that happens across the country. So it's not a come in at 12 months and we'll cut your benefit at 12 months.
But does it also involve a means test of their parents as to what they would
For
earn?
the 18, 19-year-olds, there will be, yes. Yeah, similar to how the student allowance scheme runs,
Yep.
is what will be coming into effect for 18 and 19-year-olds.
And then the relationship between your clients and Mayor's Task Force for Jobs?
Yes, yep. So Mayor's Task Force for Jobs is a partnership through councils right across the country. So we fund and support this program. And so what has happened kind of over the last year is that we have changed the contract, or the way that we work as part of Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, is that 80% of the clients on Mayor's Task for Jobs are our clients, and the other 20% may be clients that the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs or council have, you know, located themselves. So a lot of youth on our books that we're seeing. So to your point around particularly those NEET numbers that we're seeing, the last thing that we want is to see a whole lot of young people coming onto a benefit and staying on a benefit. So when we re-looked at the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, we were very focused on making sure that actually, if we're going to fund this, we actually need Mayor's Task Force Jobs to support us and work with some of our clients that are in that youth bracket that we don't want to see in our books long term. So our service centre and the crew behind me work very closely together to try and facilitate as many outcomes as we can. I think the relationships are the things that work. So we monitor how we're progressing with the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs every week. It is challenging at times, and particularly in the labour market, but the whole premise of the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs program is to make sure, or to find those jobs that wouldn't potentially otherwise be available in the rural communities across the country, to be able to give young people the support that they need to get into the workforce. So 80% will be our clients and 20% will be access through yourself and through
So just to be clear, before they can actually refer to Mayor's Task Force, they actually have to be on a benefit.
Yes, 80% of who they work with must come from us. And
But also a large group of younger people may not be on a benefit and have no support whatsoever.
correct. So we have programs. So we're about to contract community job coaching that's going to be working with youth. And as a region, you've also been successful with the He Poutama Rangatahi, which works with 15 to 24-year-olds. So they are two new programs that are coming into effect hopefully this month, if not this month, next month, to help work with the youth. So you'll have Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, you'll have He Poutama Rangatahi, and you'll have community job coaching available for youth across the country. So we don't work with clients under 18 years of age. So that's where He Poutama Rangatahi in this district is fantastic, because you'll have that, you'll have Mayor's Task Force for Jobs to work with those clients that aren't our clients.
Where does the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs currently sit within government thinking?
I can't answer that. So it's been funded for another year. That's all I can tell you. So, Mayor Wild might be able to answer some of those questions because I know the mayor's.
I understand there's, while their contract has been extended for a little while, the funding element of that hasn't been approved as yet.
Well, I'd have to
Yes.
check with National Office, but as far as I know, it's looking very good and positive, and that program is continuing for this year based on the current level of funding.
Thanks, Jane. So we're going to have to wrap this up. Thank you. So our next item is 8.2 and it's with our Chorus update, fibre network. Now we've got them online. So we'll just come out.
Kia ora, can you hear me?
Yep, and here you go.
Perfect.
Over to you.
Kia ora koutou katoa. My name is Liam Kernahan. I'm the head of engagement and advocacy at Chorus. Normally, Jo Seddon, who some of you will have met, would be doing this, but she's taking a well-deserved break in Europe at the moment. So you've got the worst version of her today, but hopefully I can run through, largely take as read our pack, but kind of run through some of the key points of it and then leave heaps of time for questions because there's always a lot of interest and a lot of questions about what we do. I also have a tendency of sometimes speaking too fast. So if I'm going too fast for anyone, please tell me to slow the hell down. Won't go through who we are because I'm fairly certain most of you know what we do, but we are New Zealand's largest fixed line telecommunications infrastructure business. I'm very proud of the work that we do to keep Kiwis connected, both socially and economically. Some of the key points I want to talk to you today largely relate to copper, but I do want to talk a little bit about the fibre network and advocacy that local councils and communities can do to support getting fibre further. As most of you will know, for some time we've been retiring our copper network. So the copper network extends to 100% of New Zealand and has done so for about 100 years. We've been in the process for many years now of retiring copper in areas where we have fibre or other local fibre companies have fibre. And that's been reasonably successful. So at this stage, we are now down to about 1,000 connections across the country inside of our fibre areas, about 5,000 connections in other local fibre company areas. So that's places like Christchurch, east coast of the North Island, parts of the Waikato and Northland. And across the country, there's only about 53,000 copper connections remaining. So we're seeing customers without much movement from Chorus moving off copper because, as you'll be aware, not just fibre, but alternate technologies are providing solutions for people that suit them better, whether it's working from home, being able to access education, social services and healthcare, or just sitting and watching Netflix and enjoying themselves. Copper is not fit for the future. And so we have made the call to retire the copper network. Sorry, I'm jumping too far ahead. Retire the copper network by 2028. A number of our retail service provider partners, so the likes of Spark, One, have already indicated they're going to be retiring or pulling services from the copper network. And that's, as I said earlier, without much push from us. We're seeing a pretty rapid and constant decline of copper services, particularly in rural communities throughout New Zealand. We recognise, though, that we need to be hand in hand and partnering with people and properties to be able to exit the network and have the confidence to exit the network, because we were at field days 3 or 4 weeks ago, and most people now understand that copper isn't fit for purpose. It's not a technology that suits their needs, and want to know what those alternatives are. So we have a number of rural copper transition customer support people at Chorus who work one-on-one with households to look at what alternatives do exist across the country and what will suit them best. At this stage, we're still working on retiring or moving or transitioning from our fibre areas and other local fibre company areas to get those copper connections onto an alternate solution, be it fibre or otherwise. But the work will continue to ensure that those on copper across the country who don't have access to fibre know what their options are and have confidence to transition. We're also not going to just drop and run. So there'll be a fairly substantial notice period. We retired it's Chorus loves an acronym, but it's our customer multi-access radio technology, which was retired 2024-2025. There was about 1,700 across the country. And we went through a process of providing notice to customers on that network over a 4-month period. We'll be looking to give a sufficient notice period for those who we're wanting to transition off copper, and making sure they've got clear information, because we live this stuff day to day. We realise that not everyone does, and that knowing what the alternatives outside of the likes of Starlink that are available for people to transition onto. And we'll be, Joe and myself and a number of other choruses will be visiting communities right around the country, holding information sessions, not just to support that transition, but to be present and answer any questions that people have. As you'll see on the right there, as at the end of March, we had 280 copper connections in the South Wairarapa district. That's actually come down a little bit already. We're now at 274. So, not just in South Wairarapa, but right across the country, we're seeing people move off copper. So that'll be a piece of work that we'll be engaging not just with you and the council on, but directly with those who are still on copper. We'll just skip through a little bit. On the fibre side, because you recognise there are a lot of people, although we're at just under 88% of New Zealanders who have the ability to connect to fibre. We recognise that there's still between 12 and 13% of those who don't. And we've been advocating very strongly with government that, irrespective of what the communications sort of next 20 to 30 years plan looks like from central government, fibre needs to be in that mix. So we've done a number of proposals to government. One of those was through the Infrastructure Commission, which was looking at expanding fibre to 95% of New Zealand. And that's about as far as we think we can go. Beyond 95%, it just becomes exponentially more expensive and largely doesn't deliver the economic and social benefits that we see with the 95%. That's about 2.5 billion to 3 billion over 10 years to build. Unfortunately, the government has not been all that interested in taking that up and putting it on their infrastructure program. However, we're confident that with good advocacy from local communities and councils, the government will see the benefit of building fibre further, because we, obviously slightly biased, but the evidence will tell you that fibre is the best technology, is the most resilient, is the most environmentally friendly, and also delivers the upload and download speeds that New Zealanders need to be able to exist in the digital world. I won't touch on this a lot, but this is a piece of work that we've been undertaking with councils around the country, and it's a piece of work that we've engaged Chris Bishop and his officials on through the new resource management process. Much like power and water, telecommunications is effectively a mandatory utility that people just expect now. Lots of councils across the country have a requirement for new subdivisions to have open access fibre. We are working with the government on a solution, as I say, through their resource management process, to make sure that Kiwis can have access to open access telecommunications. And what that means effectively is that when you move into a new house, or you build a new house in a new subdivision, that you have access to all the retail service providers. Quite often, new subdivisions and property developments will go through private fibre networks or go through Starlink or other alternate technologies. And when people move in, they realise they've got very narrow choice, which can often be more expensive and doesn't give them the certainty that open access fibre has. We'll continue to be the biggest advocates for open access telecommunications, and we'll work with the government, hopefully, to ensure into the future that Kiwis can have confidence that when they move into their new home, that they can have access to a range of retail service providers. Just finally, this might be of interest in your local community. Last year, we launched a new community co-fund program, which allows people who live in groups of 3 or 4 that don't currently have fibre to band together and get fibre connected to their house. Chorus will chip in $3,500 towards the cost of build for each of those premise, and then those local those properties and households will make up the difference. The reason why that's really important is there's a lot of communities that have fibre running past their house, but for whatever reason haven't had fibre connected. And particularly in sort of new subdivisions and things like that, where it makes sense for us to build, and where it's economic to do so, we're more than happy to come to the party. And I'm proud to say this has been a very successful and popular initiative. We had a lot of interest again at field days in how this is working, and there's a lot of people that are signing up for the Community Co-Fund project. So I'd encourage, if you know any locals in South Wairarapa that are keen to connect to fibre and keen to have fibre installed at their property, to have a look around them and see who in their community might be interested, and they can get in contact with us and we can have a chat. Finally, and it's not on the slide deck, so I apologise for that, but one of the issues you might have seen coming up a little bit recently has been a large increase in the amount of copper vandalism and copper theft across the country. It's not just impacting us. Famously, it impacted KiwiRail 2 weeks ago in the tunnel there, and we're also seeing electricity networks across the country impacted by copper theft. First and foremost, it's a danger to the people that are trying to steal the copper. There's not our network, but particular electricity and rail. Those are live copper connections, which could, do a lot of damage to individuals that are trying to steal it. And also it has other indirect follow-on effects to not just our networks, but to other households throughout the community, and also disrupts transport. So we are working with the New Zealand Police to understand better what support they can offer in this space. But we're also asking communities to be vigilant, and if they see this activity happening, to let the police know and to encourage people to stay away from the copper networks across the country. It's something that particularly electricity networks have been exercised about, and we're seeing more and more copper vandalism happening across the country. And unfortunately, most of the time when people go and vandalize our copper network, they also hit our fibre network. So it's having implications not just for us, but for the retail service providers, the mobile network operators, and communities right across the country. Something that we are keen to ensure communities have information about. Local police officers know that it is a risk to, local community safety, and to ensure that there are the right networks to be able to raise those issues and hit it on the head early. So I know that's a real quick run through. I just wanted to touch on a few things. Very happy to take any questions you may have about any of the things in the pack that I didn't cover, and also the things I did talk about.
Lovely. Well,
Thanks, Liam, for that, and also thanks to Chorus for the community work that you're doing and some of those programs that are underway. 70% of the Wairarapa is rural, and within that there's a whole lot of small communities, which with climate change and the impacts of that become isolated for 3 to 4 days. And in the absence of copper, it's become very challenging to communicate with them, or they to communicate with because the battery only lasts for so long. So from a resilience perspective, what are some of the thinking and ideas that Chorus are looking at on how to maintain communications with some of these very isolated communities that we in the Wairarapa have?
Yeah, and it's a really good question, and it's something that we spend a lot of time talking to communities about, because we are seeing not just more significant weather events, but we're seeing them happening more often than we ever have before. So one of the challenges that we have is, irrespective of whether households are on copper or fibre, or an alternate service, they all need power to work. I know in the good old days when you could have the copper line working without power for days on end, that just isn't the case anymore with the technology that exists at our exchanges and cabinets across the country. So even if households are on copper, they need power either at their home or at they need power at their home for it to work. We also need power in our cabinets and exchanges. So some of the things we're talking about with communities and households are making sure you do have resilience at home. So ensuring you've got backup generators, ensuring that you've got, for instance, a mobile phone that is fully charged, ensuring that you have potentially a backup option through satellite phones and things like that. What is good is that some of the new generators and the power options that are available at home are certainly longer lasting. And we are seeing more and more rural households picking up the option for their own personal resilience. I know the government has recently invested some money into resilience, particularly in the mobile network space. So they're looking at investing more into ensuring, mobile cell towers have backup generators and battery-powered options that last for more than 24 hours. We'll continue to advocate for the government for more resiliency funding as well, to ensure that not just our network, but the broader telecommunications network can withstand the challenges that we're going to continue to see.
A couple of questions. In respect to Starlink, does New Zealand have other satellite options? Because we can see Starlink can get quite political, and we kind of want to hedge our bets in that respect. That's one. So is there any, what do you feel are the biggest weaknesses in the entire communication network? And three, do you have any plans for a solar flare that actually, if it hits New Zealand?
Good questions. I'll be honest, I can't answer the third one, but I'm happy to come back to you on that directly. On the satellite options, so there are a number of options, and there's a domestic option here. So Gravity has a satellite alternative here in New Zealand, and from anecdotal feedback, both at field days and through our CMA retirement process, there's been a lot of very happy customers that have gone through the Gravity satellite option. There's a number of other providers that are looking at coming into the market, including Amazon. So they were due to launch their satellite program here in New Zealand end of last year. It's sort of still ongoing, but we are seeing more and more of the competition coming into the satellite space, which is good for consumers. But I mean, Starlink is still a very good technology, and I appreciate the politics of it can be difficult. But certainly outside of Starlink, there are a number of potential other options there. What is the biggest challenge, or what is the biggest thing that worries us from a telecommunications perspective? I think probably government, and I say that not in terms of just the political government, but the bureaucracy, thinking we're sort of done here, like we've built the network to 88% and that everything's fine, and actually I'm originally from a farm down south, and I know it's not, and you will know from your community that there's still a lot of work to do in the telecommunications space and ensuring that rural New Zealand has the same access to opportunities that our urban counterparts have. So one of the things we're constantly reminding the government of is that while we are world leading in what we've been able to do here in New Zealand with the fibre network, there's still a hell of a lot more to do. and that people in rural New Zealand have the same needs as their counterparts in urban. So, we do a lot of this advocacy, but we are very keen for communities and councils across the country to also ensure the government doesn't forget the job's not done yet.
Thank you, Liam. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Someone to make that update, please.
I'll move that.
Ross
Yeah.
and seconder, Chris. Thank you. Yeah. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against?
Oh, sorry, not again. Just wanted to say something about it. So that was a useful briefing and I've already had that briefing and we should be thinking about what we want to talk to our rural communities about in relation to what is available. We don't need to talk about it now, but that's something I think we should think about because they have got options and opportunities and et cetera for remote people. And we have a lot of those.
Yeah.
So I not now, but we need to have a think about
That's a good point.
what is available from them and others in the comms area.
So not as resilient as we think they are, but they also have fixed their mind that copper was an answer for them.
Yeah, there aren't that,
Yeah.
we've had numbers on the numbers of copper we've got, but I'm thinking of other, I mean, there's some useful technology now. I'm not saying we talk about it now, just think about it, yeah.
Okay, so we're now going into item 8.4, the Kia Hāwhina update reports. So the mover to receive Kia Hāwhina. Thank you, Chris.
Yep.
Hello. So I just want to introduce Simon, who's from Kia Hāwhina, who'll talk through the report. This is just an update on what progress has been made to support the sports and recreation initiative.
Kia ora koutou. Thanks, Matt. So Simon Rosengrave from Kia Hāwhina Wairarapa. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you. The service provider agreement was put in place commencing 1st October last year, and since then your staff have been fantastic in terms of their support and discussions and helping with planning. And through all of that, they have encouraged us to come along and be talking to you. It's sad for us because many in this room would never have met me before, but our previous chairperson, Barry Hislop, some of you would have come across through his connections with councils for a number of decades. Barry unfortunately suddenly passed away 2 months ago, which saddened us and I think saddened a number of people in the community as well. So Barry would have loved to have been here alongside me for this first presentation. Like I say, the service provider agreement commenced from the 1st of October last year, and obviously the scope that was put out through that service provider agreement was significant comparative to what support in the sport, physical activity and recreation community looked like previously. When we look at it, we look at 45 clubs and organisations on the database of communication that we have. In fact, it's growing as things grow with new organisations popping up. And that doesn't include the 8 schools, including the secondary school that we are working with as well. So there's a significant scope. Whenever we provide a report and take it as read, I never want to insult anybody's intelligence by simply going through the report. However, I'll talk about key pillars within it. And the first one obviously is in terms of clubs and organisations and the support in that space. And the first key for the agreement was to make sure that all these clubs were governance ready by the time that April came around in terms of the new Incorporated Societies Act. There's a lot of work that went on either with clubs themselves or with other organisations such as Nuku Ora, the regional sports organisations, or in some cases the national bodies. And we feel that it is a success measurement that 41 of the 45 clubs and organisations were registered under that new act by April this year. Over 90%, when you consider that Amateur Sport New Zealand came out and felt that it was an extinction level event in terms of what would happen to clubs around the country. The fact that there were only 4 of those 4, one of them is actually now working with the national body about becoming registered, and there's been a significant amount of work. That was the case study that was referenced in the report around Athletics Featherston. that club was in danger of simply folding up, and it's been a massive success story pre-Kia Hakinakina's time working with them in the South Wairarapa, and it would have been sad for a club that's had that success to fold. So a lot of work around sustainability, succession, and making sure that they had an avenue and a pathway moving forwards. So in that space, I guess in terms of incorporated and charities registration, there's a constant ebb and flow. There's some clubs that simply feel that they want to function as a kitchen table organisation, and so the re-registration was never a priority for some, maybe. Those that did not register, we have reached out to communicate with. We know that there are 2 that are looking at about coming back on board under the new auspice, which only really leaves 1 in the South Wairarapa. So out of 45, we don't think that's too bad going in terms of the clubs in this region. Another pillar under that we focus on is our school partnerships. In terms of the school partnerships, our drive within our region across the Wairarapa is to have more people physically active, more people connected, resilience growing through the same. A key focus for Kia Hakinakina in the 7 years that it's been active across the Wairarapa has been to ensure that there's opportunities for tamariki and rangatahi to engage in physical activity with an enjoyment focus so that they want to continue to be engaged in that space. So we offer partnerships with schools where we go and support teachers with PE to help us evolve that process. We actually had Libby Patterson, who is a Martin Borough resident from Vic University, help us align to the curriculum in that space. So what we offer, we know from teacher feedback, voice of the participant is impactful. We're actually going through collating voice from the teachers at the moment in the South Wairarapa. And for our next quarterly report, there'll be a significant amount of voice from them in terms of what it means, in terms of connectedness, resilience, confidence, and more in that space. Another pillar that we obviously are focusing on is bringing events into the South Wairarapa that haven't either been here or maybe fell off the wagon 20 to 25 years ago. I guess a good illustration of that is the first South Wai Kids Try that we know Ron Hughes and Featherston used to run 2 decades ago, and bringing that back in and having 100 participants actively engaged within that was fantastic. The feedback from all of those involved was, can we please have a try series? So we're now planning a try series for the South Wairarapa come November, December. So more opportunities, removing the geographic barriers, the cost barriers that have previously been in place. And obviously from speaking to those involved, other residents, the perception that there are Masterton or other Wairarapa-based organisations that simply don't want to bring their offerings down into this neck of the woods. And so we are making sure that that is not the case in terms of what is being provided. We have a massive potential calendar of events coming forwards. One of the ones that's really exciting us is the potential Southern Coastal Walk. We've engaged Piranoa School, Tuarangi Rugby and Tuarangi Netball around a support mechanism for that. And we're looking at getting that off the ground for February next year. We have a meeting with those involved in the next 2 weeks to see where we can get to in that space. And the other pillar, and this is certainly a feedback from the voice from the clubs when we have asked, is around coaching, volunteering and leadership. We have been working with a range of sports organisations and Nuku Ora for the last 6 months around what a generic coaching and leadership approach for the Wairarapa region as a whole could look like. We have now got the first offering of that in the South Wairarapa commencing next week, which will be led by myself, which is an exciting thing to get off the ground. We know that there's a range of organisations that simply don't offer within the Wairarapa, or there's limited capacity for those that are Wairarapa based. So being able to actually lead that and bring that to the South Wairarapa is a fantastic starting point, and we're looking forward to what that looks like as we proceed. And those are the 4 key pillars that we look at in that space. It has been 9 months. It's been 9 months of engaging with the community. My wife's family are fully Featherston based, so I feel like I'm actually related through marriage to half of the South Wairarapa anyway. But it's about creating relationships, obviously expanding upon what was offered previously, because it is now out for the rural community, incorporating Martin Borough and Featherston. And we feel that we've made good strides in terms of getting some key starting points underway.
Thanks, Simon. Any thoughts on any questions?
Oh, thanks, Chair. So what's your funding model look like? And is it sustainable?
It's a very good question in the sporting industry, the sport and physical activity industry at the moment. Obviously, like most organisations in the Wairarapa, we are functioning off a limited pool of funding. And that is dropping. We've actually had communication with Trust House in the last couple of weeks where their funding that is being provided across the sporting network is reduced by 30% for this year. And that's a significant blow to a range of organisations. We've tried to diversify over the years, so we've been functioning for 7 years. We're obviously not just operating in the South Wairarapa, we're also operating in the North Wairarapa. So one of the ways that we've diversified income is we actually run the YMCA facility on behalf of the YMCA in Marsden, bringing in additional income through that, through user pays, grant funding, user pays, obviously at the moment through yourselves, as well as obviously looking at some of these events that we're bringing in. For example, I mean, the Southern Coastal Walk, we will utilise to try to generate some funding, but we're also generating funding on behalf of Puranoa School and Tuharangi Rugby and Netball. That's the system that we're trying to implement. And we're keen, obviously, to bring money in for South Wairarapa District Council because we want that to become region-wide in terms of an option for an event across Wellington. So a diversified income stream for us, but an income stream that is, I won't say it's perfectly sustainable over a decade, but certainly for the next 2 to 3 years, we feel comfortable.
And the amount, you getting anything from central government or?
No, nothing from central government.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Sorry, just about funding again. Have you looked at, obviously with the sports, you're looking at multitude of different sports organisations. There's a lot of feeding businesses that, make money from sports shoes to balls to bats.
Yeah.
Is there a way that you could possibly access funding or advertising from the funding from those companies?
Potentially, yes. It's something that we haven't explored at the moment. I mean, I guess we very much align to this normal strands of funding that sports organisations in this region are used to. The likes of Te Manawa, Aotearoa, the Sport NZ funding, as well as local funding. But there's no reason that we can't. It's actually a good point to look at what options there are. I guess, as everybody is aware,
They make money from your success, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And we want to sell our success. And we do believe that for Kia Hakinakina, there's not another organisation that's really on the ground that's broad like this in this country. And I can say that fairly confidently. I spent some time working for a national organisation leading a development plan for them. And so some of the ideas that we bring to the fore are national and international leading, and therefore can become a selling point for us in that space.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for the presentation and the reports. Really interesting. I followed this a little bit last year when the council was coming up to make a decision about it. When it actually went through, I was a bit surprised. I mean, I thought it was, oh, that's great, but I was surprised because thinking, oh, that's probably and the nice to have, given the kind of conversations that people have. And then I read a little bit more about it, and it was I think it was almost a unanimous decision around the council. But the consultation with the community had received more uptake from the community than any other consultation that there'd been or something like that. The response was really, and that's swung people to say, hey, this is really a good thing to do. So
it doesn't surprise me, and I know that sport physical activity isn't for everybody, but we all know the community benefits from that. And it is intrinsic within who we are as New Zealanders that sport and physical activity play a part in how we approach life. And I guess when you talk about central government funding, I've never actually seen any of our political parties reference sport in terms of budgets, in terms of funding, and it's an area in this country that is under significant pressure. There's a lot of fracturing and there's a lot of organisations under pressure. So if there was a central government party that came out and said would provide more funding in sport, certainly get my vote. And I'd suggest it would get the vote of a range of the community because there's a real need. And from feedback, from talking when we ran our community open evenings at the beginning of our process, feedback around the significant user pays that has to go into actually being able to undertake any form of sport or physical activity. There are people that will be missing out because of the costs that have to be applied because of the lack of other funding options. And that's one thing we are trying to remove in this area. We can't control what other regional sports organisations do, but certainly with our offerings, we're trying to either make it free or as cheap as possible so that people can engage.
And just slightly tongue in cheek, I take part in the barefoot exterior off-road sort of events that are happening in Wellington, and it'd be wonderful if you could partner with them to have one or two over here. But anyway, we can talk about that some other time.
Oh, look, to be honest with you, we're on the ground doing things, but we're about trying to create partnerships as well. And in the report, you would have seen that Greater Wellington Council, we picked up to try to run pedal ready in the Wairarapa. It's the same sort of thing. If there's an organisation that's doing something effectively somewhere else and wants to put it into it, who can we talk to? How do we do it? We're more than open for that.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Thanks for being.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're considering item 825, and we need to proceed the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs Overview and Update Report. We have to receive the Mayor's Task Jobs Overview and Update. Chris, thank you. Second round. Hilda. All those in favour, say aye. Yes.
Through the chair, to welcome Bex, Carlton District Council and the team to talk about the Mayor's Task Force of Jobs. And so the intention here is to give you a bit of a background around what it's all about, things that are happening. We've acknowledged that in the past that had the visibility that it's would be expected. So hence bringing the team along today. So over to you.
Tato, thank you very much for the invite. So I'm Bex Clark. I'm the Community and Partnerships Manager at Carterton District Council, and the MTFJ team work as part of my team on behalf of the 3 councils to deliver this regional project. Just a couple of things before I hand over to Nicola to present this gorgeous presentation to you, is we started to deliver this program regionally on the 1st of July 2023, and that was a big conversation with MTFJ National. We really believe that working together as the 3 councils will deliver a better outcome for our young people and our businesses in the Wairarapa. So we were given permission to operate as a region, and the only region in New Zealand that's operating like this. Everybody else in the MTFJ program operates individually. So I think it's great that the Wairarapa is paving the way for collaborative working, and it is working really, really well. One of the things I just wanted to highlight was that the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs program really contributes and enables actions to happen for a number of our strategies and a number of our work programs. For example, the WEDS program, we want to keep skill in our region, but we also want to increase our want to keep skill in the region, but we also want to develop skill and keep that right here in the Wairarapa. Our regional rangatahi strategy, where we're supporting our young people, the MTFJ program helps to implement actions from our strategy there, which has been adopted by all 3 councils. The other thing that is a really positive flow of effect and contribution from the program is the economic development story. So we're working with our businesses in rangatahi, and as Darlene mentioned before, we want to be keeping locals here. So we focus on putting locals into. Nicola's got a presentation, and we're really happy to circulate this. I do want to note that there's an update from this particular version, just that Nicola will speak to, but we'll send out the updated version. And also really happy to send out some specific reports that we provide to the mayors monthly that speak really specifically on monthly achievements of outcomes. So happy to share that if that's of interest. Hand over to Nicola.
Yeah, kia ora everyone. Thank you again for inviting us. It's my pleasure to work alongside my colleague Damien Koika within Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. So what we have here is it's a presentation that we tend to share with our Business After 5 events. So we host regular Business After 5 events through our connections with the 4 district-wide business associations. So it's a little bit of a lighter presentation, but essentially to give you an overview of what we do, why we do it, how we do it, and what we achieve. So essentially, what do? we help young people into employment. We work alongside employers to make that transition easier and to support those employers, and we provide background support. So that means our job doesn't finish once a young person goes into employment. We provide pastoral support, check in with the employee, check in with the employer to make sure that everything is running smoothly, that our young person is thriving, and that the business is doing well taking on that young person. Thanks, Amy. One thing I like to share with our business associations and our businesses is this age-old quote of what is it with the young people of today? Does anyone want to take any guesses of where this quote came from that I found on Facebook not so long ago? I see no hope for the future if it's dependent on the frivolous youth of today.
I think it was some ancient Greek philosopher.
You're absolutely right. Next slide. Thanks, Amy. We've been saying that for near on 3,000 years.
God.
So I would suggest that it's not the youth of today that are our problem. I think it's us, because if you see with the next slide, without changing the narrative, our youth, of course, are our future councillors, our future mayors, they're our employers, our business owners, our volunteers, our entrepreneurs. They're our succession plan as a region within Wairarapa. The Mayor's Task Force for Jobs program has been running since 2020, and in that time we've seen over 600 young people within Wairarapa alone move into local jobs with local businesses. Businesses have been able to expand, and Wairarapa as a region has a succession plan. We need our young people of today, or of every day. One thing I like to share with people is, does anyone know what the average age of a truck driver is in Wairarapa? It's 60.
Yeah.
So in about 15 years.
Yeah, that young.
So in about 15 years, we're going to be
70.
under a bit of pressure if we don't start investing in upskilling our young people and keeping them within the region. So if we'll go to the next slide. So what is it for employers? As I say, a lot of the success we have isn't from answering job advertisements on Trade Me and in Seek. Most of our placements that we make is through the connections that Damien and I have throughout Wairarapa, throughout the region. It's our direct relationships with employers that make all the difference. And for our employers, we're essentially providing fees-free recruitment, but we don't just throw anyone at a business and ask them to employ them. We get to know our young people. We get to know them personally. We know their strengths, their weaknesses, and we kind of matchmake, if you like, our young person with a business to ensure that there is success for that business and for their young person. So that's the kind of the support that we provide. And of course, pastoral care is a big part of that. We'll often get a business that will ring us who employed someone from 2 years ago who's having, and that young person is suddenly having some mental health issues, and we will help support that young person and support that business with services that they can lean upon. We're also able to provide access to wage subsidies. Darlene talked about flexi wage, Anaramati. We have fantastic relationships with the 3 work brokers at MSD. Damien actually spent 20 years at Work and Income in various roles, so his connections there are instrumental to the success that we have with our young people. Next slide, please. And what's in it for rangatahi? A lot of it comes down to skill development. Yes, we provide help with CV writing, cover letter writing, driver's licensing we provide. Most of the referrals that we receive don't have a driver's license, or they might be on a learner's license. They can't afford to sit restricted or can't afford to access driver licensing, driving lessons. So we provide that. Most importantly, I think, is providing work readiness skills. A lot of referrals have poor literacy and numeracy. They may not have working parents or working role models at home. So it's providing support around that and education and upskilling and what it means to actually be work ready. What does it mean to actually get up in time to go to work? Remember that you do have to pack a lunch, you do have to take a water bottle, you know, you do have to turn up on time. You need to be able to get there and to get home again. So whilst they say it sound like really basic skills, I'd say a lot of our candidates that we work with don't necessarily have those role models. So that's something that we help build and provide. We currently host what we call our group chats every fortnight, where we get all of our young people into the room, spend a couple of hours with them, we'll give them some food and have an activity, but most importantly, they're learning communication skills, they're learning to job search together, they're learning to support each other. So again, it's sort of soft skills around work ethic is a lot of what we do. Over and above that, skill development, CV writing, driver licensing. Those will seem like no-brainers, but as I say, there's a lot of our young people that don't have access to those things. And the next slide. So what does it look in reality? As Beck said, really proud that Wairarapa is the only region in New Zealand where the 3 district councils work together within Mayor's Task Force for Jobs. An employer in Carterton employs from Featherston and employs from Masterton. Our young people that we work with, currently we have a candidate in Puranua and we have a candidate in Eketuna. So we've got candidates from Masterton employed in South Wairarapa. We've got South Wairarapa candidates employed all over Wairarapa. So in blue there is where our candidates have come from, is where our businesses are. Like, is it candidates or businesses? I can't see from here without my glasses.
Location
is in blue and our candidate. Yeah, orange and orange. So as I say, we've had quite a lot from South Wairarapa that have been employed, you know, all over the district. So say it is a district-wide initiative. Some of our placements are outside of Wairarapa, but we have helped them into those roles. The one where it says Wairarapa, where our businesses, we've got quite a, sorry, it should say that businesses are in orange. Yes.
Yeah. Business locations are orange. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have
exactly what it shows.
With a particular health provider, Access Community Health. They work district-wide across Wairarapa, and we've managed to get a lot of our young people providing care support. And that's been a really fantastic outcome. Our young people today, they have huge amounts of empathy. So going into care support, whether that's looking after aged people or whether it's looking after people on ACC recovering after life-changing accidents, that's where a lot of our candidates are moving into. So placements by industry, yes, hospitality and retail is a big place or a big avenue for placements. Construction, as Darlene indicated, has also been on the rise, but basically we place our candidates throughout lots of different sectors. Again, it's not by necessarily answering job advertisements, it's from direct relationships with employers that provide most of our outcomes. So what does that look like? Workplace visits are a big thing for us, where we take a small cohort of rangatahi into a workplace because a lot of our young people don't know what they haven't seen. On the bottom right there is an image taken from Cartel Foods here in Martinborough. One of the candidates in that picture had a job interview, but when he went to visit, he decided it wasn't for him at all. He wasn't interested in pursuing that avenue. Another one of our candidates went along not knowing what to expect and has ended up being in employment there with Melissa and Jason at Cartel for the past 4 months and is absolutely thriving and becoming a really valued member of the team. We regularly take our candidates through places like J&L. Down on the bottom left is Breadcraft, so J&L and Breadcraft are our region's 2 biggest employers. Breadcraft employ around 200 people. The great thing for our candidates to go and see there is that Breadcraft isn't just about making bread. They have avenues for IT. They've got chemistry, because they're constantly monitoring flowers and yeasts and water qualities, etc. They've got their logistics, their marketing. So a lot of different pathways that a young person can enter. Yes, they start off on floor packing, but they move into many different pathways. Similarly with JNL, on the top right there is TSC traffic. One of the things that we did last year is put 10 candidates through traffic management training in order to make them employable and give them one of those micro credentials that makes it a lot easier to get into the job. So Todd there on the right at TSC, he tends to take our candidates on a casual basis, but the chap that he's standing with has been with him for the past 2 months. 2 months, and has only had a couple of days off. So a really great outcome, even if they're considered to be casual employment. And here's some of our success stories. So as I say, we get to know the kids, as I call them. We get to know what their kryptonite is, what their superpower is, and really go into bat for them. It's important to get to know them. For us, they're not a number. They're people that say, we come, well, I become quite attached to. They become our kids. And so when we see them, being successful, that's fantastic. In the middle top there, in bright green, is a candidate who we supported when he finished Kuranui College at the end of last year. He had been doing some work experience at Crichton's in Greytown. They weren't in a position to hire him at that time, but we stayed in touch with him and with the employer, Kate, and through our work broker friends at MSD. And eventually managed to get him a paid 4-week trading period followed by a flexi wage, and he's been there for, gosh, 9 months now, which is fantastic. Down on the bottom left is one of our candidates who went into the offering in Greytown again, also on a flexi wage. He lives in just on State Highway 53, close to Martinborough. Yeah, so that is a fantastic outcome for him too. So yeah, as I say, this is a presentation that we do for our business associations and other community groups. How can you get involved? Is really let us know the opportunities that are out there. If you know someone that is considering taking on a young person or is thinking they might have a casual or part-time role coming up, get in touch with us. It's, as I say, almost a triage, fees-free recruitment. We get to know our young person, we get to know the business, and we support both as much as we can to ensure that both entities thrive. As said, we do have another presentation that we provide to the mayors on a monthly basis, and more than happy to send our June, which will reflect the last financial year forward to you, so you can take a look. Yeah, happy to take questions, and sorry for my croaky voice. Thank you. Any questions?
I think that is fantastic. How do you do the first engagement of these kids? Like, I mean, and do they get psychological help as well? Because sometimes these kids, well, I mean, they could be from really troubled backgrounds.
Most of our clients come from working income. They were referrals from working income, and they've got a job seeker. And we talked about Darlene. Sorry, my background was I did 20 years with working income, and saw Darlene when she first started to where she is now. So, and her presentation said 80% versus 20%. So 80% of MSD referrals, and the 20% they might be from anybody within that's heard about our presentations and stuff. And mum and dad rang us to, they've got 16, 17, 18-year-olds at home that don't want to go on a benefit or anything like that. So that's the 20%. And people just walk in and say, hey, can you give me a hand? It is 16 to 24, but I mean, if somebody comes in, we just try our best to work this. So the referrals come from MSD. We get the referrals, I ring them. A lot of times they don't answer the phone because it's a strange number. So then I'm texting them the message. So we need to meet. This is Damien, MTFJ, and I'll book them an appointment. If they're in Marston, it's normally at MSD. If they're at Carterton, it's at the event centre. And Featherston, Martinborough, we'll probably say the Martinborough ones, but because she lives here. And if it's Featherston, it's at the
the library. So I do the initial meet and greet, which is, it's pretty basic. So we try and get as much information at that time as we can about what they're wanting to do, what sort of, and we're finding it was a standard sheet that we were going off. And one of the questions, an important question that we come to is, do you have any issues with mental health? Do you need any help with mental health? So we sort of expand it because we're finding that a lot of our clients are coming with Asperger's, autism, ADHD, OCD, and quite a few of those things. So I pretty much just spill out all of those things and ask if any of those resonate with you, because we have lots of people that have those sort of issues, and it's something that we really need to know before we can, because we want to go into bat for people.
Yeah.
But we need to actually get to know them first, and that's taking a while. So we've got a 12-week period in which to work with them. And 12 weeks seems a long time, but when you're trying to build a rapport with some of these rangatahi, it's not the easiest thing to do. Hence why we've just done one so far, and we're doing another one tomorrow, which is the group chats. And because we're such a big place, like Nicholas said, we've got somebody in Pirinor versus somebody in Nikitahuna, and we want to bring all of our clients together. So we have group chats in the Rangatahi Hub in the Event Centre. So that's tomorrow's our second one that we're having. And so I live in Marsden, so I pick up the Marsden ones and bring them there. Nicola lives here, so she'll pick up around these ones up and go there. And then the Carlton ones just make their way there. So because it's a big area, we just have to try and work things as much as we can. So just getting them all together. And we've got quite a range of different people. We've got two boys, they're twins. They won't even look at you, they'll look at the ground type thing. They're really shy, really, and for them to be in a group situation like that, we just have to have activities to try and get them away from each other and engaging with other people.
You can't underestimate the car chat. So
Trapped in a car is like.
the car.
Yeah.
You're not looking at them, you're looking at them. Yeah, so you don't have to look at each other, but the car conversations are quite revealing. I picked up a young woman a couple of months ago, picked her up to take her to something, and then found out, well, she hadn't eaten that day because Dad's at home smoking weed all day, and he gets aggressive. She called the cops on her, so she stayed in her room all day. So, okay, we'll go and get you some food. And, so it's those sorts of conversations make all the difference.
What's the soundtrack of the car?
Oh, that's a question they ask. What do you want to hear?
Yeah.
And then someone will come up with something. So, it's a way to break some ice and
Silence?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes.
I just like to say, from my experience, the people that have been kind of pushed into business in the past haven't had this support, and it's a really tough, the success rate's really low. So I think it's just really, I think it's great.
So for the end of June 2026, we've actually got 46 candidates into employment. Not all of them are considered contractual outcomes because they've gone into casual part-time employment. However, they're still upskilling, that's giving them work ethic, etc. We've had about half a dozen candidates that, through conversing with myself and Damien, have gone into further education, so gone into tertiary education, also upskilling. And out of those 46, I think we've got 32 which are contractual outcomes from a target of 30. So as I say, most of them are not through answering job advertisements. I can't stress enough, it's the relationships that we have with businesses. It's hanging out at Kitcheners and talking to people and finding out what they're looking for.
Yeah, final question, Rob.
Thank you. Having attended the sessions from theirs and some of your events, I get to hear some of the success stories, but I suppose my question is more directed to where are the current gaps? And in terms of the operating model, how would you change it if we get that opportunity?
We kind of are changing it a little bit in the sense that in terms of gaps, it's tracking that data, that community data that isn't necessarily within the NTFJ contract. So we've just subscribed to a new system called hired.co.nz, which helps our young people produce cover letters, CVs, and makes them more accountable for their job search. But within that, we're able to track some reporting on our under 18s not on benefit, our 18 and overs not on benefit, how many licenses we're providing or, paying for. We can also track more who's going into education. So just track that larger data that exists outside of the contract.
Yeah, integration. Yep.
Because I think that's important to feed back to our communities. We do have young people that fall through the cracks and are essentially invisible in terms of our system, as in they're not at school, they're not on a benefit.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for your amazing mahi. Continue. Yeah, may it continue.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now we're community board, community resilience and emergency management operating reports. So I have a mover to receive this, please. Yes, in a second. Thank you. Those in favour say aye. Against. Carried. Nigel. Kia ora, Nigel.
Hello, everyone. Firstly, thanks for the facility this morning while I navigated some conflicting priorities. I appreciate that. I'll take the report as read. So this year we've had challenges in the emergency management world, ongoing events, which have delayed a little bit our work really getting into what we're doing with community boards. But I'm pleased to say that we're underway. We've had some initial workshops and meetings and looking at what we're trying to achieve. We've come up with this 3 workstream program to divide our tasks into an achievable division. So we're focusing on the Community Emergency Hub as the first workstream. The events that we've had this year have really highlighted that we have really strong community-led response already within our district. We're seeing many examples. This recent event this week, we've seen many examples of communities just getting on with it and looking after each other, checking on each other, and then escalating what they need to or dealing with what they can. And so that's a really key principle that we're carrying into this work with community boards, that our job is to guide and enhance what the community will already do so that we get their buy-in and that we are working with them on that. So in our, we've had a couple of workshops so far. We've got one planned with Greytown. We've done the first workshop with Martinborough and with Featherston, looking at this first work stream and how we can engage buy-in and interest in community emergency hubs. So we're developing that work stream, and then we'll be bringing the community members in to get more of their ideas about how they want to be engaged with that. The second work stream, which we're planning some workshops for, is going to be probably our biggest challenge, I think. It's really obvious from working in the EOC that we've got some really strong areas where certain sectors of our community are checking in on each other and are communicating with each other. We've got really strong relationships with partner agencies like Rural Support Trust, who have got channels into the farmers in the rural sector that they have mandate for. We've got really strong we've got really strong connections in with individual communities often that face isolation and have had to develop these methods through necessity, like Cape Palliser, like Lake Ferry. And our gap is really the urban areas and lifestyle blocks, lifestyle is. But with the urban areas, this is where the community emergency hubs are really going to come in as a really important tool. And through that, our ability to get a community-led approach for how we can check in with each other. And when we come to doing that second phase, with the second work stream, we'll really be looking at how we can make sure that we've checked in on each area of our community, and we're discussing in initial discussions, we've discussed whether that's through location-based checking. We divide the town up into sections where we have community champions, or it's more that every street, every subdivision has already got a group chat. They're already checking in on each other. And so how do we lean into those kind of things? We've got organisations like churches, sports clubs, the Lions Club, those kind of organisations that we can lean into. So realistically, it's going to be a combination of all of those tools that are available to us, all of those channels that are available to us. And then that third work stream is about supporting community resilience initiatives. And we've seen a pretty clear example last week of what happens when some members of our society struggle to meet their needs on a day-to-day basis, and then in an emergency aren't covered, haven't got. It'd be wonderful if we could say that everybody might have the ability to store 7 days of food for themselves and their family. It's not always the reality for everyone. There are people who rely on the food bank, there are people who are doing it tough. And so once we get to that third work stream, we really want to be leaning into any initiatives that are already happening so that we can try and strengthen that pre-existing resilience. We can help people be more able to get through emergencies and as an extension, take the pressure off the official response, so that we don't have to send helicopters to places. So we're going to keep planning through the next series of workshops. We're starting with just the community board, excuse me. And then we're going to have workshops where we invite the public in and get their ideas about how that this can practically work for them, so that we can develop in a way that the members of the communities can really buy into, can feel ownership of, and it doesn't rely on the community board having to drive it the entire time, which is a really important principle of this work. That is a really brief summary of what we were at so far. I'm really interested to hear any feedback or questions on this work.
Thank you. Yeah, I do have one. So the key principle in this update emphasises local knowledge, vulnerable communities and inclusive, sustainable arrangements. Can you tell me why mana whenua is holders of significant local knowledge and cultural leadership are not visible anywhere in this update?
This update doesn't specifically call out the whenua or any specific groups within our community, partners. I can absolutely assure this committee that mana whenua are a huge partner for us in this, and that our working arrangements through emergency management this. So I understand that we haven't specifically pulled, mentioned what we're doing and what our channels are in this. And I would love any feedback on or suggestions on how we can develop that. I'm aware that the community boards we're using the community boards as a community connection opportunity for the different wards, but we've also got the Māori Partnership Committee that I think could be better utilised as well.
Yeah, but still under your statutory obligations, shouldn't there be something stated in that? You know, emergency management bill number 2 or things like that. Shouldn't there be some connection or something said of them in that? I'm just asking the question here. I don't know. I'm just asking. So should there be?
I mean, I guess, yes, there's, yes.
No, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else got any questions?
Sure. And then afterward, yeah, sure. Thanks, Simone. Yeah, there's the broad planning and putting things into place, like with the workshops that are coming through and so on, and then just had this huge event. And I'm just thinking about in Featherston there was quite the community board, just talking about boards, we're really into it in terms of practical responses and things. But there was in the community there was there's obviously a lot of work. This is a huge thing going forward, right? And understanding community planning, that people were saying, oh, who do we call? Who do we get to help us? Whereas the focus has got to come, we're all in this together, and getting the particular, the role of the hub, the role about the planning thing. So I can, understand the complexity and something going forward, but there was great response, I think, but also some confusion about who's doing what and that sort of thing. So that was just an example of where we're at and where we're trying to go forward in a better way. But thanks.
Yeah, I suppose thanks, Chair. My question, Nigel, is probably a bit of an extension. It's not a question, it's an observation, actually. I mean, the criticality of having the community involved in terms of education, resilience and planning is so important these days. But increasingly, I'm seeing council resources dragged away, like yourself, to respond to these events that we're increasingly having. And then on the other side, we have this expectation that our community boards will be focused on resilience, focused on taking these work streams forward, but I don't see that happen. I don't see them enthused. They may be enthused, but in other places, anecdotally, I'm hearing they're not enthused. So I'm just wondering, do we need to pivot it somehow to make it more effective? And I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but it seems that we've got few resources and our resources are increasingly heading in one direction, but our expectations are things should be happening, nevertheless. But I'm just wondering how we're going to do it. But that's a question for council to think about. Probably not, well, if you have any thoughts on it, but that's just a consideration.
My experience so far with the workshops that we've had has been that there is a lot of enthusiasm and drive for this. From all 3 boards that I've met with, I've got the members saying that they really want to get into this. They're expressing the frustration that I also share, that we would have loved to have gotten to this earlier in the traineum, and every time we schedule things, we have flooding events, which is preparing for emergencies is being held up by actual emergencies, which is very ironic. So I don't think I share the position that there's not enthusiasm, because I think that there is.
Yeah, I concur. Like we had our post our last formal meeting that you're at, Rob. After that, we actually had the meeting with and there was a lot of support, and I think that, you know, we've made a lot of steps forward. And it's coming out in the next month, really.
But it's June.
I know. I mean, the meeting just kept on being delayed, but anyway, we are where we are. And there is motivation at the moment to happen. I guess my question is, after this last event, I thought there was a real, and looking at emails that have been going backwards and forwards about the one truth in communications, I thought there was a real problem with Antenno, because as councillors, we've been selling Antenno as being the source for the town's information. And what was happening was that what was really good was the links in Antenno, and that you'd go onto links and you could see the heights of the rivers and you could see the powers from those individual sources. But the problem was that Antenno was not being scheduled and messaging out in an expected way, so that, you know, you go into Antenno and it'd be like, last post was 12 hours ago. And so you go, there's no point really looking at it. It's the one I've already seen. But what people didn't realise, that if you went into that old post, the links were updated, and so you would get river heights in the last half an hour. Or so I think what would be really good is actually constantly punch out an Antenno message with a surety, so that when people look at it, they then jump into the links and get the live information. Because I think that was, everyone got frustrated with Antenno. They haven't updated it, but actually the updates were there. They just had to dig in. And so it was just a matter of getting that scheduling of Antenno to constantly hit their phones, so that they go, oh God, it's them again. Great. You know, I think there was just a little link missing there that actually would have benefited our ratepayers. I think
Our residents.
That's it. I think shareholders, citizens.
They're just residents. They live here. People who live here.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, thank you, Nigel, for that. Moving on, we're sort of just about running out of time, but thank you very much.
Midgets. We call them midgets.
No, you cannot call them midgets.
Okay, so now we're going into public excluded. And
Have to move it.
sorry,
Have to move it.
move.
Public excluded resolution.
Yeah, we're getting here. Yep.
Sorry. And then
Going into public excluded, 9.1 senior housing, and that's actually to protect that privacy, senior housing's mana while we work through this. Do I have a mover to enter into this public excluded? Thank you, Chris. And seconder, thank you, Rupert. All those in favour, say aye. That's against. Motion carried.
we just have a couple of minutes break.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks.